Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. It is fantastic to be able to sit with all of you today and to learn a little bit about the upcoming election that's happening this November. For those of you who I have not met, my name is Rabbi Scott Chaffrin. I am the Executive Director of the Jewish Community Relations Council of St. Louis. I am very pleased to be able to invite some incredibly committed, knowledgeable, fantastic leaders here with us today who are going to be helping us learn about all of the things on the ballot for November 5th. There are a lot of them, so we are not going to waste too much more time piddling around with things. We're going to talk about the races that are being run in general. There are a lot of ballot initiatives and amendments on our Missouri statewide ballot and some other local ones as well. And we're also going to talk today about how you can get involved in helping elections run smoothly and securely, and also encouraging people to vote who are eligible to vote, because everyone who is eligible to vote should be voting and should be allowed to vote and have a smooth, easy time voting. So, with very little further ado, I want to introduce our guests who are here as our panelists today. Ben Singer is a wonderful community activist who works for Show Me Integrity, a great organization that is involved in our election process and has done wonderful work. Jen Bernstein is here from National Council of Jewish Women. They've been working hard on a lot of great things for this election, and especially on Prop 3, which she's going to talk to us about a lot. And Mevi Mead is here as well. She's been working with Jobs United for Justice, and also has been doing a lot of great work on Prop A, and has a lot of insight about how our community has been working. Welcome to all of you. Thank you for joining us in these confusing times with a big election coming up. So before we get into too much of the nitty-gritty, I want to jump into elections in general, why they're important, what is involved, and what people should know. So from your points of view, why do people need to vote in this election?
Great question, Rabbi. I think a lot of people, especially in states that are often considered, a red state or a blue state, feel like their voice doesn't matter because the electoral college in their state they might feel like isn't relevant. But there's so much more than the one race at the top of the ticket, that one election. There are 500,000 elected officials across the country, including thousands in Missouri who are on the ballot this year. And especially for Show Me Integrity, where we especially work on ballot measures, there are so many important ballot measures. So I'm excited to hear from some of the other experts here on ballot measures and share from our end on Amendment 7 as well, because your voice really makes a huge difference on these ballot questions.
I want to kind of echo and amplify that as well, that, on this November's ballot, outside of the presidential race, we are voting on governor and lieutenant governor. We are voting on secretary of state. We're voting on state house and senate candidates. We're voting on school boards. We are voting on local municipal authorities. There are so many things that really do impact all of our lives day to day in hugely powerful ways that your voice has a large stake in, especially in all those local races. But in the presidential race as well, your vote actually does make a huge difference. And it's important to be able to express your ideas and ideals in the public square. Other people's takes on why this particular election is maybe different than other elections, not just for the presidential race, but for Missouri in general.
Jen, feel free to jump in if you want to go. Hi, everybody. Thank you very much for having me here. My name's Mevi. I use she, her pronouns. I am on staff with Missouri Jobs with Justice, and I'm working on the Missourians for Healthy Families and Fair Wages campaign, which is Vote Yes on Prop A. I am a Missouri transplant who loves Missouri, adores Missouri. I'm married a Missourian. I produced a couple Missourians. And this state is an excellent example of democracy in action. So it's both what you can do politically to screw up democracy through gerrymandering and really trying to take people's voting power away. And we have this 100-year-old, really important element of direct democracy that, believe you me, is under attack and will continue to be. And we've been fighting for decades to keep it, and we're going to continue fighting, but we got it right now. So we got to use it because they're coming for it. I guess that's where I would say the urgency of this election is, but evidence, we're the show me state, right? Like, show me why democracy matters. Well, let me show you. I think you showed yourself with, we have voted for things that our legislature won't do, but we can do them through the amending the Constitution process, or in the case of Proposition A, changing the law process, or stopping bad things that Benj, I think, is going to talk more about. But we've done it. Show me, we've done it. We expanded Medicaid. We've raised the wage before. We've stopped anti-organized labor efforts that are really trying to cut us off from being able to feed our families, control our bodies, and create the family-centered economy that when Missourians get together arm in arm, we support. So I guess that would be my 2 cents here. This is an important election. The thing that we're going to do, that we're going to talk more about, what we can do, both with the candidate elections are the candidate elections, but the issue elections, we need to take advantage of now because they're under attack. We can't take them for granted. And if people don't use them and treasure and cherish and defend them, they're going to go away.
I agree with everything that Mevi said, although I'm disappointed that none of you are wearing sparkles like I am. It's our couturier sale kicks off today, and it's our 60th annual. So we were all dressing up in sparkles. But normally I don't wear sparkles, but today it's a special day. I think, again, to
but
echo,
you always sparkle, Jen.
Oh, well, thank you, Mevi.
Be clear.
As do you, as does everyone. Mevi made a really good point. This is a unique opportunity, and I hate to be alarmist, but I think when it comes to Amendment 3, this is our shot to get abortion legalized in Missouri. This is probably our one and only shot. Again, that's just my personal opinion, but the fact that they are going to continue to go after the initiative petition process, they're going to go after the majority rule. We just need a simple majority for to get this passed, and they're going to try to stop that. This is the year to do it. So it's wonderful to see yard signs out there. It's wonderful that I've got a stack of 200 postcards here that people have written that I'm sending out today. That's great, but yard signs and postcards don't vote. And we need everyone who has a yard sign. We need everyone who's been canvassing. We need everyone who has been sending postcards and making phone calls to get out and vote.
I think that's a critical point as well, that we have a lot of these amazing opportunities on the table that, who knows when they're going to come around again, if ever, and being active and not just assuming that because things are on the table that they're going to, reach the finish line. It really does take all of us to show up and vote ourselves, but also to really encourage everyone to vote. And I say that as someone who works in community, but also has plenty of my own very, staunch opinions that I hold. It doesn't matter if you agree with my opinions or not. I want everyone to vote. I want everyone to be out there voting. It is your right. It is an obligation and a privilege. And to make sure that people understand that that's the best way to make their voices heard is really crucial. There's a couple of pieces of information I want to also share. So registering to vote for this November 5th election ends on October 9th. If you have not checked your registration since the last election, please go and check. Things like it has to have your correct current address. That needs to be correct. Otherwise, it causes chaos in the system. Making sure that your name is spelled correctly, all those things. It takes 3 seconds to click. Our wonderful Elise Picker, who works here at JCRC, is putting links in so you can find and check your registration. I am a paranoid person who checks it every time. I have not moved in the last 8 years or changed my name. It always ends up staying the same, but you never know. It's good to check. I just had a conversation with a whole group of high school students. If you have a high school student in your orbit who will be 18 on election day, they need to still register before October 9th. And they can do that. If you're going to be 18 on before election day, you can vote because you're 18, but you do have to register. It's really important. Also, we talked about this before the primaries as well. In Missouri, there is access to absentee voting, as there's in many states. There's also in-person early voting. For the 2 weeks before the election, you can go to any number of places. It does not have to be your normal polling place. I went to the Clark Library right over here because it's very convenient and close to work. It was wonderful. I was in and out on a random day that was not election day, and it was fantastic. I believe that October 29th is, National Early Voting Day. So if you want to grab a bunch of friends, take some selfies, and post them online to encourage people to vote early, that's wonderful. All the early votes will be counted. I know that people have a lot of fear about voting, absentee or voting early. All of them will be counted. The systems have been checked and triple checked. So I always encourage people to make a plan on how you want to vote, when, set a date on your calendar, a little reminder, because if your life is anything like mine, something will happen and the plan will fall through, and then you'll have to go to plan B, C, or D before actual voting day. Also, always, if you have concerns about your work, legally, everyone should be able to leave their work to vote. That is the law. If you want, to double check with your employer and say, hey, on Tuesday, October 30th, I'm going to be voting, that's great. And make sure that they know that, but everyone should be able to vote. It should not be something you have to miss work to do or take time off to do. All right. With all of that said, we're going to dig into the propositions that are on this year's ballot. I want to encourage people, if you have questions as we're going through, because there is a lot of information, please put them in the chat. We will try to get to as many as we possibly can as we're going through. And just going to go in numerical order. Some of them are pretty straightforward. Some of them are very not, and need a lot of explanation. The reason is because sometimes ballot language is confusing intentionally so. Some of it, there's just a lot of pieces to some of these propositions. So the first one on the ballot statewide is Amendment 2 that would legalize and regulate certain types of sports betting in Missouri. That one is fairly straightforward. If you would like legalized sports betting in Missouri, that would do that. There are some provisions where the state would gain revenue through that process. There are some detriments where legalized sports betting, especially online sports betting, can worsen addictive gambling habits and make it very easy for people to fall into money traps. That one, there's plenty of pros and cons on that. I don't know if people have things to jump in on Prop 2, but it's pretty straightforward, I would say. Yeah, Benj.
On the revenue piece, the state of Missouri has a pretty rigorous process for estimating what revenue might be and expenses for government. So I really encourage people to take a look at that for Amendment 2. I know I've heard that the amount of revenue expected to actually go towards education is highly uncertain because of some of the tax breaks that it allows that will, as you will see on the ballot, it estimates that the amount of revenue for the state may be as little as $0.
I echo that caution there's a lot of talk about how this is going to create tons of revenue that will go towards public education. And there's a lot of doubt about whether that's actually the case and whether they're overstating that for sure.
Another piece to that just came out, I believe last week. There was a report on some of the advertising that's been done for the Say Yes on Amendment 2. And the vast majority of it has come from large out-of-state conglomerates that are involved with the sports betting industry. So that also, when it's talked about as something that's good for Missouri state government, or this Missouri state budget rather, it calls that into question when the biggest proponents of the amendment are not in Missouri at all. All right. Moving on in numerical order. Prop 3, I'm going to turn it over to Jen to talk a little bit more about Prop 3.
It's actually Amendment 3.
Sorry, Amendment 3. I keep going back and
no,
forth.
I know it's very easy to confuse the two. So Amendment 3, so we're working really hard to end Missouri's cruel abortion ban. It's a total abortion ban, and we should have the right to decide to make our own personal health decisions. It's up, it should be our own decision to make. Some of you may have seen the commercial that just came out yesterday with the couple who had experienced miscarriages, and they could not get miscarriage care in the state of Missouri. People are terrified to go to the doctor if they're having difficulties in their pregnancy because they don't know if their doctor is going to be able to treat them without repercussions. So, not only should we have the right to an abortion, but there's also so many complications above and beyond with what Missouri has done. So basically, NCJW is part of a statewide coalition of various organizations that have been working to get Amendment 3 on the ballot. We played an integral role in the signature collection campaign. In fact, we collected 15,000 of the 380,000 signatures. There were only 170,000 signatures needed, but we got twice that many because we knew there would be extra scrutiny on them by the Secretary of State. And so right now, we're working hard to get out the vote and to get people to learn about Amendment 3 and to vote yes on Amendment 3. There are various ways you can volunteer. You can go out canvassing. Our national NCJW organization is going to have a national phone banking night in October. I'll put up all the information in the chat when we're done, or I'll send it to Elise to put up. We're going to have a Men for Choice event. Lots of different things. You can also, I'll give Elise the website too, that you can sign up to canvass. We also have yard signs at NCJW. I would caution to maybe not come this week because we're going to be very packed with Couturier shoppers. But if you want to come by starting next week, we will have plenty of yard signs for you to put out. We've got postcards, lots of things. We also are part of, we have convened Rabbis for Repro, which is a group of rabbis around the country, but specifically in Missouri, who are encouraging their congregants to volunteer, to vote yes, lots of different things. So, again, I'm sure you all have heard a lot about this amendment. It is vitally, vitally important because right now, Missouri has a total abortion ban, even for survivors of rape and incest. Women in Missouri cannot receive abortion care, even if their health is at risk. And that's just terrifying and should not be the case. So just encouraging everyone to vote yes on 3. If anyone has any questions, just pop right in.
Jen, I'm wondering if you could say just a word or two about sort of how Missouri's picture fits into the national picture, because we've seen recently in previous ballots in other states that there have been abortion laws passed, but also amendments that have been brought forth through similar initiative petitions. And talk a little bit about how that fits into Missouri's context.
Well, this was done by our next door neighbor in Kansas a few years back, and like Mevi talked about earlier, the attacks against the initiative petition process were, this round at least of them were probably, I would say, spurred on by that. They saw how popular that amendment was with regular everyday Kansans, and they were worried that was going to happen in Missouri, and lo and behold, it did. And that is why they have been trying to chip away at our democratic right to put something on the ballot. So, and they saw what happened in Ohio, and there are several states now that are trying to enshrine abortion rights in their states. So we're one of many, and the polling is going very well. People, even if they personally don't believe in abortion, they see this as a government overreach. They think that they went way too far on this. We were the first state to outlaw abortion after the Dobbs decision. I mean, right away because of the trap laws. So people think even if they don't personally support abortion rights, they think the state went too far. So it's people in the middle that we're going to have to reach. We know that there are people who agree with us. We know that there are people who are never going to change their mind on the other side. But we really need people to get out there and talk with their friends who are maybe on the fence and tell them why this is such an egregious situation.
Thank you. That's really helpful context, and I agree, a hugely important issue to be able to make people's voices heard on. Again, if people have questions as we're going through, please, chime in to ask or indicate in the chat. We will try and answer as best we can. We're going to continue on with some other amendments as well. There is no Amendment 4. We already had an Amendment 4 in the primary election in August, but Amendment 5 is talking about allowing additional gaming licenses for riverboat gambling. Again, I have not heard a lot of commentary on that either way. We have some riverboat gambling, as many of you may have seen on the Mississippi River and Missouri rivers. This would just be another site for that. I did some digging this last week. I couldn't find a lot of a lot of commentary on that, but that's what that is. Amendment 6 is a little bit complicated. It's the ballot language is defining the administration of justice to include the levying of costs and fees to support the salaries and benefits of law enforcement personnel. So that's a lot of words. The sort of summaries of the arguments that I could find, one of the bill's big supporters said that the motion would enshrine the fact that sheriffs play a crucial role in the administration of justice and ensure that they have robust retirement funds and packages. Some of the people who oppose the measure say that it would reinstate a set of unjust incentives that tie pension contributions to the volume of arrests, prosecutions, and other aspects of the criminal justice system. So those are the two sort of competing claims on Amendment 6, that on the one hand, it's putting money towards the pension and benefits for law enforcement and ensuring that they have competitive benefits and salaries and retirement plans. On the other hand, by saying that portions of fees and fines, so tickets that would be written, can be tied to that, there is some worry that there would be an incentive to make more and more questionable tickets and fines and arrests based on the fact that a percentage of the fees would go directly to people's benefits. Any of our panelists have anything else they want to add in for Amendment 6? Anything I didn't cover? All right. Amendment 7. I'm going to take a little bit of a backseat and allow Benj to jump in, who's been doing a lot of work with Amendment 7, and tell us about what is the scope of Amendment 7 and what are the goals and impacts?
Thank you, Rabbi. Yes, hi everyone. I'm Benjamin Singer, CEO at Show Me Integrity and a member at Colrena. Shout out to my fellow Colrena members and Colrena for sponsoring this. So I'm going to talk a bit about the myths and facts about what Amendment 7 really does, which is primarily ban ranked choice voting, approval voting, and open primaries. I also want to take a minute to share a little bit more information on how everyone can vote. Elise, if you would mind giving me screen sharing ability to run through some of the slides on Amendment 7. And then after I talk about Amendment 7, Rabbi, if it's all right, do you want me to jump right into how to serve as an election judge? Okay, fantastic. All right, I still don't have screen sharing ability, but I will say that early voting begins October 22nd. I really encourage everyone to vote early. This is a new law that Missouri has starting started in 2022, and this is the first big election year where everyone can really take advantage of it in a major way. Like the Rabbi said, it's extremely easy to do, and certainly much easier than finding time on just one given day of election day. So definitely encourage everyone to check it out. It's available at most, but not all libraries. So definitely use the links that Elise dropped into the chat to check out the early voting. And great, I now have ability also in terms of absentee voting. Oh, real quick about who Show Me Integrity is. So we are a cross-partisan organization. Our board includes Democrats, Republicans, and independents working together. So trust that we're giving you nonpartisan information in terms of achieving a representative government. We have over 500 donors across Missouri, including the current and former chairs of the Jewish Federation of St. Louis. And movote.org is a fantastic resource if you want to vote absentee, if you are going to be confined due to illness, or you're a caretaker for someone who is confined due to illness, or if you're going to be out of your county on election day. movote.org is the easiest way to go and request your absentee ballot. So that's all you need to remember for voting absentee, movote.org. You can sign on your phone. You don't have to download a PDF. Really encourage everyone to use that. And we worked during the pandemic with our Jewish former Secretary of State, Jason Gander, and also former Governor Matt Blunt, who also served as Secretary of State, in helping build and support that. As Mavie said, we have to treasure the ballot initiative process because we're cross-partisan. We've lifted up the voices of our Republican supporters to show that people across the political spectrum, not just liberals, believe in democracy and want to protect the ballot initiative process. This is something that's been used across the political spectrum for over 100 years. So we have helped ensure that people know this is an important nonpartisan tool. That said, Amendment 7 is something that the legislature placed on the ballot. It was not a citizen initiative that was placed on the ballot by voters. This is of, by, and for the politicians who put it on the ballot. And there is a misleading first line that claims it's about non-citizen voting. We've published 3 op-eds in the Kansas City Star, the Springfield News Leader, and the Post-Dispatch. So let's give an example of the problem that a lot of people are trying to solve that the legislature doesn't want to be solved. So one quick example, this was the highest turnout Republican primary in Missouri history. And it was 4% of Missourians who voted for the governor who was elected in 2016. Because you have only so many people turn out to vote, a much smaller number turn out to vote in primaries. And then if you're talking about one party primary, because we have separate party primaries, and then you can only vote for one. So you're talking about a sliver of a sliver of a sliver of the population who vote for the person who ultimately wins the election. And whether you're in a blue district or a red district, so to speak, it's the same issue, where these separate primaries and the limit on voting for just one candidate can lead to an accountability to an extreme. And especially for the Jewish community, it's very dangerous when our leaders are accountable only to extremists. And we know anti-Semitism is something that is very common among political extremists. And we need to have people who want to respect human rights. So what is the problem with the way we vote? Like we already talked about, people, because of separate party primaries and the limit of voting for just one candidate, people end up accountable to a small group, and it leads to toxic polarization. This is the op-ed that we published in the Post-Dispatch last Wednesday. And really what the legislators are trying to do is trick Missourians into going on the record against these new systems. Approval voting is one example where you can vote for multiple candidates. City of St. Louis uses that. Ranked choice voting is another that they use in Alaska. As you can see in Alaska, the way they do it, and there have been efforts to pass this in Missouri by Citizen Initiative. They vote for one in the primary, and then you can rank your candidates among the top 4 in the general election. So by combining primaries and being able to select multiple candidates, whether it's the St. Louis City approval voting system or the Alaska style ranked choice voting system, helps decrease that toxic polarization that leads to a narrow accountability to an extreme, and it broadens it so that elected officials are incentivized to cater to the entire electorate. So that's what Amendment 7 is really about, and it's a hidden agenda to ban and prevent these things and trick Missourians into going on the record against them, whether you're for them or against them or neutral. Because, as you see here, the first line on the ballot for Amendment 7 is about allowing only citizens to vote. That has already been illegal for a century, and we won't dive down the rabbit hole unless it's an area people are really interested in the Q&A. But changing it from all citizens are eligible to vote to only citizens are eligible to vote is also going to allow the legislature to pass laws that limit which citizens are eligible to vote. Right now, Missouri has one of the strongest protections of voting rights in the country, stronger than the US Constitution. And removing that all citizens are allowed to vote, the only citizens, while it sounds like it is just a trick, which that is part of the goal, it also might have major repercussions in terms of trying to disenfranchise more groups of voters. So this is called ballot camp. When the legislature places a shiny object at the top that sounds good, for example, allowing only citizens to vote, something that polls very high. Most people agree only citizens should be allowed to vote. But then the fine print is this real goal, like we've talked about, banning voters and local government's ability to decide if you want to use a different system, whether that's ranked choice voting, approval voting, open primaries, or some combination of those. Fortunately, there were negotiations during putting this on the ballot in the legislature where they carved out the existing approval voting system with open primaries in the city of St. Louis that Show Me Integrity and a large coalition of groups helped pass back in 2020. But this would take away the ability for folks in St. Louis County and across the state. And it's an effort to put Missourians on the record against this, even if they're not even voting on that part, if they're just voting on the citizenship part, because if there are efforts in the future to pass an initiative that would broaden accountability in our elections, they would be able, the politicians who put this on the ballot would be able to say, well, Missouri voters already voted against that, so they don't. So I know that was confusing, and I covered a few different topics there and tried to connect the dots for you in terms of the ecosystem for democracy reform in which it's taking place. So happy to answer any questions about that. And yes, we could pass a ballot initiative in the future to overturn this initiative, this amendment, excuse me, but it certainly would be nice to continue to have the freedom and not lay the narrative that Missourians are opposed to this system. So we encourage you to share information about this. Join our Respect Voters Coalition email list that is working on defending and using the ballot initiative process. And then follow Show Me Integrity on Facebook and Instagram to share the educational posts that we're putting out, dispelling some of the myths and facts. I'll pause for a minute before I dive into becoming an election judge, just if there are any questions.
Yes, I have a question.
Yes, I'm sorry. I just saw a note from Elise that I was quiet on the microphone, so I'll try to be closer to the microphone. Go ahead.
Okay. I agree with you on Amendment 7 that we should all vote against it. And personally, I would love to see ranked choice voting. I think it fixes a lot of things. But regarding that first statement about only U.S. citizens can vote, I know in some states, municipalities can allow non-citizens to vote. Do you know for sure what the rule is in Missouri regarding municipal elections and non-citizens?
There's some legal analysis. Missouri law requires you to be a U.S. citizen in order to register to vote. So it is basically illegal for non-citizens to be voting. So that is in law. It's not in the Constitution in terms of that statutory ban. So that's where that first line gets even more complicated on Amendment 7, which is making the Constitution and statute consistent. So there is a law currently banning non-citizens. Great question. I will dive into how to become an election judge, but if there are more questions on Amendment 7, please alert Rabbi Shafran and Elise, who can stop. All right. So being an election judge means that you are serving as part of a bipartisan team of an equal number of Republicans and Democrats at a polling place to help administer the elections. The friendly folks who will check your ID, hand you a pen or ballot marking device, give you your ballot. Those are election judges. So they verify voters, issue the correct ballots to voters, and like Rabbi Shafran said, it is a paid opportunity. So you get the nachas from doing a great mitzvah and helping administer our elections, and help people vote, which is such a sacred and important freedom that we take for granted in the United States. And you get a little bit of money. So wins all around. Definitely encourage it, and you can get additional pay for attending the mandatory training. Lead election judges and supervisors help handle some of the more complex aspects of election administration at each polling place. The pay is even higher for those. And you may wonder why we're highlighting St. Charles County and Jefferson County in these slides. So obviously St. Louis City and St. Louis County have majority Democratic voters based on the election results we see, and they often have enough Democratic election judges, and they need an equal number of Democratic and Republican election judges. So if you're in the St. Louis area, which you probably are based on the organization sponsoring this, the odds are that you are a Democratic voter, which means you're actually more needed as an election judge in some of the counties that have a minority of Democratic voters and election judges. When I asked Denise Lieberman at the Missouri Voter Protection Coalition, where she might recommend sending Democratic election workers, she suggested Jefferson County as an area where, if you're in the St. Louis area, it may be accessible and they may have a need. I will say, if you are a Republican, and I hope there are many Republicans on this, you are desperately needed as an election judge in St. Louis County and city, and frankly, in every county. So please contact St. Louis County and city or city boards of elections and volunteer to be an election judge. You are especially important and needed in administering the elections. So these are the qualifications, and it is uncomfortable for a lot of people. You know, about 50% of people are independent, but in order to serve as an election judge, you do need to declare which political party you will be representing as an election judge. You can see some of the time and detail, and there are some physical requirements in terms of helping set up voting booths, and you might need to sit for a long period of time. So just be aware of those things. I'll pause for a minute. You can scan this QR code with your phone, open the camera app, scan it, a little yellow or some other color link might pop up, click on that link, and you can go ahead and do that. Or if it's easier for you, go ahead and jot down this phone number, give them a call. They will be thrilled to hear from you. And the next slide I'll go to is for Jefferson County, which is, as Denise said, maybe the place where you are needed the most if you are a Democrat, but also probably if you're a Republican, they probably really need you as well in both of these places. So there's the phone number, jot it down. Please give them a call, and please serve as an election judge. It's a great mitzvah, and we'll all thank you afterward and like your Facebook post about having served as an election judge. All right, thank you, everyone. Happy to answer any more questions.
Thank you, Benj. People have questions on Amendment 7 or on any of the mechanics of becoming an election judge or serving to help elections. Brian, are you raising your hand?
Yes, sir. Thank you. I sure appreciate all the information I've heard today, but I think it's very important that we repeat this whole program less than 1 week before the ballots open. As the National Council of Jewish Women found out years ago, when we were going to put 50 cents a pack on cigarettes, because we're the lowest taxing state in the country on cigarettes, 50 cents was all going to go to preschool education, which is very important in this state. And then 1 week or so before the election, the cigarette industry came in, dumped $12–13 million. And luckily the council got emails out to everybody to vote no. And sure enough, we did vote no, and it didn't pass. Another examples of the wonderful state legislation we have, the last gasoline tax was passed for 6 cents. Didn't go to the voters to vote on it. They passed it themselves in Jeff City without even talking to the citizens of Missouri. And back in 1992, when they passed the 3-tier 2 cents, 2 cents, 2 cents every 2 years, it wasn't stated on the 125 words that are required, or the maximum 125 words on the ballot. You had to go out into the hall and read the rest of it. Not one penny of that came to St. Louis City, county, or any other city and counties in the state where all the other money is distributed. It all went to the state of Missouri because it was a petition drive put on by the road builders of Missouri. So they got all the money for big, big jobs and nothing for the cities and counties in Missouri. There's a lot of good things going on in this state, but unfortunately, I know about so many of the bad things, especially when it comes to elections. So what I was suggesting is somehow, I guess now since we can vote early, it would have to come out about a week or so beforehand to see whether or not our friends in Jeff City changed anything on what we believe to be the ballot now, and maybe changed in the future. Thank you very much.
And I think that, all of our organizations will certainly put the word out if anything like that happens. For example, we put out a 5 ways to advocate e-blast every week. I know that JCRC has an advocacy newsletter that goes out as well, and I imagine jobs, which they definitely do because I receive them. We will keep everyone apprised. Subscribe to our social medias. That's the best way to get the word out too. And just, keep your eyes open.
Yes, and as part of our 3 groups, Colrena, JCRC, and NCJW's partnership with the Jewish Partnership for Democracy, we have 2 main goals, one of which is recruit more election judges, and the other is dispel misinformation, including by disseminating media electronically. So please follow all 3 of those organizations' social media accounts, and if you see information being shared about these, share it to your Facebook story, share it to your Facebook page, your Instagram. That is the way that most people are going to see these things, far more people than signing on to a hour-long or 45-minute long Zoom. But Brian, you're 100% right that most people don't pay attention to the ballot measures they're voting on until those final days or even final hours, or even when they're in the booth. So sharing all that content in that final week and the final day of the election, please go ahead and do that. And even if you've shared one before from one of the organizations, go back to that same post you shared and share it again closer to the election. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, it's a great comment. And we will definitely be following up from now through election day with a lot more information. And we're happy to put on more Zooms like this or more other programs that, allow people to ask questions and bring in more information. I appreciate the point. I want to turn things now to our friend Mevi, who is going to dig into the one proposition that is on our statewide ballots, Prop A. For those of you who are unclear, the amendments are amendments to Missouri's state constitution. They change what is in the Constitution. Propositions change laws, whether they are state or local laws. So Prop A has a lot of really important issues to weigh in on. And so I'm going to turn things over to Mevi to dive into those as well.
Thank you, Rabbi Scott, and for everybody else who has gone before, and for the question. So what I'm about to talk about is a little bit more straightforward, I think, than what the other presenters have had to do. So I'm just going to eyeball to eyeball you all with what I want to say here, and then really, really welcome your questions and thoughts and feedback. So again, really appreciate you having me here. My name is Mevi. I work with Missouri Jobs with Justice. I use the she, her pronouns, and I'm on the Missourians for Healthy Family and Fair Wages Vote Yes on Proposition A campaign. I come here, as I mentioned, as a transplant and adopted Missourian, which hopefully gives me some, I chose this state. I'm choosing this political environment to try and make change. And Missouri Jobs with Justice, that it's not just a slogan. We believe that people who work in Missouri deserve equity, respect, and rights to raise their families how they raise them while working and making Missouri's economy run. And I know a lot of election seasons, it feels like you've got this or that politician. Of course, none of the previous speakers are being transactional. They're being very deeply rooted in the faith, in the community, in the change we can make. This campaign I'm talking about, Yes on Prop A, is also coming from that perspective. And I want you all to know that we're not just here to do the thing I'm about to tell you we're going to do, address some problems that are in immediate need of addressing. But we want to do more to move towards a place where we think the center of Missouri's electorate, our lived experiences, and they're very connected with the Jewish faith about what a family-centered economy can look like and can do for our world, ourselves, our children, and our future. So, what is Proposition A? Vote yes on Proposition A because it'll do two things. One is it will gradually raise the minimum wage to $15 per hour by 2026. So we'll do a little increase to $13.75 per hour in 2025, and in 2026, everybody working for businesses in Missouri will earn $15 per hour. This has been a decades-long effort. Missouri and Kansas City have been leaders in that effort when people just couldn't even imagine that $15 per hour could be a minimum wage. It is a minimum wage in 18 states and the District of Columbia. It can be done, has been done, and is economically successful. We have raised the wage previously in 2006 and 2018 through this very mechanism, and our economy has been strengthened because of it. This Proposition A will also, new to people, I think, who think I hear minimum wage, I hear sort of a labor issue. We're going to ensure people who cannot currently earn 1 minute, they earn 0 paid sick days in their job. There are people right now, essential workers, who can earn 0. This Proposition A will ensure that all Missouri, or not all, but most Missouri workers will earn the ability to take some paid time off. They'll earn it by working 30 hours and then they earn 1 hour of paid sick time. That's how it works. We can talk more about the details, but this will ensure that, frankly, most employers, the people who employ the bulk of people, do offer these kinds of benefits, but there are some employers who are not, and they need to be brought up to speed to ensure that the 1 in 3 Missouri working parents, so right, we're talking working parents who have kids at home, who are currently having to choose between when their kid is sick, do I listen to my heart to stay home with my child and protect my family? Or do I listen to my wallet, which says I need money at the end of the week and the end of the month to pay the bills, pay for food for that sick child? Like that's an impossible position. We should not put people in. Prop A will solve that. It will allow those workers, 1 in 3 Missouri parents, to be able to take that day, earn that day, to take care of that kid or whatever family member as they define their family, to take care of them. So those are the 2 concrete measures in Proposition A. There are no tricks, there's no candy in this measure. It's very clear, it's very straightforward. It will improve, it will take us to people's lives, and it will take us toward these steps for having a family supported economy in Missouri. And I'll just stop there because I know we're also coming up on time and people may have questions. But again, just want to reiterate my appreciation for y'all carrying us out, for considering supporting this effort, and for JCRC for being an early endorsing organization in support of this effort.
Well, thank you so much, Maddie, for going through that. Are there questions on Prop A, on what it entails? I think you did a really good job of summarizing the big major points and also why they're really important for not just working families and people who are employees, but for the state, for the way that we do business here in Missouri. Again, if people think of a question and it's not coming to the top of your tongue right now, please feel free to put in the chat or let us know that you have a question. You can also feel free to contact JCRC or any of the wonderful organizations represented here with questions that you may think of tomorrow, or like, wake up in the middle of the night and like, I should have asked about that thing. We're happy to try and provide as much information. The information we have is not only limited to this hour that we're discussing. One other big thing that is incredibly important, not just for this election, but for all elections, is that there are wonderful individuals and groups that are out in force during the election season to try and make sure that people have access to the vote, that they're able to go and cast their vote. And there are people who are there to help protect, in case anything happens the way it shouldn't, people's ability to vote. So we have a wonderful group here in Missouri, the Missouri Voter Protection Coalition, that has volunteers that monitor elections. They are not poll workers, they are poll monitors. And so if something happens where a person should be able to vote and is not being allowed to, or there's any other mistakes that happen, these are individuals who are able to report that and talk with legal experts to expedite people's voting ability. You can also, if you have a problem at any point in the voting process, whether it's your registration is incorrect and you need to get it fixed, whether it's knowing your rights, whether it is coming across barriers that were unforeseen, you can actually call a hotline that will give you access to a legal expert who can help you resolve that issue. It's a wonderful service. And you too can participate, just like you can participate to be a poll worker. You can also be a poll monitor who helps make sure that there is nothing going on at polling places that shouldn't be, and that everyone is allowed to vote. These are wonderful opportunities to really participate in democracy and ensure not only you are able to vote as you should, but that everyone who is legally allowed to vote gets the opportunity to vote. Great question just came in. So where do we find judge records? That is a tricky one. Google is your best friend on those. If you go to search a particular judge on Google, you can find their records. Also, if you go to Ballotpedia, any judge who is running for a seat, they have links to their personal pages or their pages through the local, state, whatever municipality they serve. That would be a good place to look. There's a couple other people who indicated they had some questions.
A quick note on judges. I know I said it before the August election as well, but one trick that I use just personally, not speaking on behalf of Show Me Integrity, but I highly recommend getting your sample ballot. Search, St. Louis County sample ballot or St. Louis City sample ballot. Download that and you can see everything that's going to be on your ballot and not get surprised once you get into the voting booth. And then what I do is I take that and I call someone I know who is an attorney who practices in St. Louis and say, hey, based on your professional experience with these judges, would you suggest retaining them or not? And that's a helpful way to get the advice of someone you personally trust.
No, that's a good recommendation. There is, if you go to either the city or county of St. Louis or whatever municipality you happen to be a resident of or where you'd be voting, and you can download a sample of what your ballot will look like. You can also search through Ballotpedia, but I highly recommend looking at the ballot before you go in. This is also something my wife and I have a sit down at our kitchen table at some point before we go vote to look at. There's always more races than you think there is, or more ballot propositions. A couple people mentioned in the chat, some of the counties and cities do have local ballot propositions. We do not have time to go through all of them, but it is true. St. Louis County has a few. St. Louis City has some. I know Jefferson County has at least one ballot proposition about raising taxes. So it's really helpful to have that printout in front of you. And yeah, if you are like me, you can then make notes on your printout and bring it into the voting booth with you and look at your notes and be like, what did I think about that proposition? What did I think about the race? you don't, it's not a test. You do not have to memorize your answers beforehand. Come in with notes, especially on a ballot like this where there is a lot of things to think about. In the chat, you can see we put some St. Louis County sample ballots and also a link to Know Your Missouri Judges, which has information about judges who are serving or who are running for election in the coming year. I saw a couple of people mute and unmute and some hands raised and now lowered. Does anybody have any other questions in the last couple of minutes?
I think there was a website, a URL that you could put your name, address exactly in the state of Missouri, and your ballot will pop up. Has that been posted on the chats? Do you know?
I don't think so. I can pull it up quickly.
That might be Vote 411 and was just League of Women Voters, but there, when I checked yesterday, they didn't have it up yet.
Ah, okay. Cheryl, do you have a question you
When
want to ask?
I have a couple comments. The first is the first link you said to check your voting record. When I did that, that pulled up my sample ballot. So, but the other thing I just want to emphasize, if you know anybody who needs an absentee ballot, they can apply for them now. Make sure that they do that and fill those out, because I suspect some of these amendments will come down to every vote.
And if they have not registered as permanently disabled, that absentee ballot, if you mail it in, will have to be notarized. I am a notary. You could always take it to the library too, but you could come to the NCJW office Monday through Thursdays from, just Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday from 8 to 4, and I will be happy to notarize it for you free of charge, obviously.
But even if you register request it now as disabled, it does not need to be notarized.
Correct. If you request, if you have to register, request to vote as permanently disabled for it to not be notarized.
Okay.
How about absentee ballots in person?
So
those do not need to be notarized.
correct.
But I'm talking about in person. Has that actually started? I think we read that it started already.
Yes, for with a reason, you can now vote in person at the but only at the election office.
And that has started, correct?
If
So-
you're going to be out of town on
Yes.
election day, then already you can go and you can vote early, but only if you're going to be out of town. For any other reason, you have to wait until October 22nd, 2 weeks before the election. And
No, any of the excuses will work for right now. You have to have an excuse, but
Right,
any of
you
the
could be-
excuses. So for example, my husband, who's a physician, could go and vote now because he's a medical worker.
And they're not going to, if you say you're having surgery that day, they're not going to say, I
Correct.
need your doctor's note. Or if you're going out of town, they're not going to say, I need to see your tickets.
right.
Yeah.
Okay.
The system in Missouri is quite confusing. For absentee voting, you do need to have some sort of reason why you're requesting the absentee ballot. The difference between absentee voting and in-person early voting, which is time limited to just the 2 weeks before the election, so starting on October 22nd, is that you do not need any reason or excuse. As of 2022, anyone who wants to can vote in person early, and you can do it, as we said, at libraries, at the election center. There's lots of locations that serve as polling places, and you can use them for that 2-week in-person early window. If you prefer an absentee ballot or you need an absentee ballot, make sure you request it, and you do need to have a reason for that. And if you want to do that, also that limited, that kind of slim window of absentee voting that you're doing in person, it does have to be at the election center. Cannot do that at the libraries.
And the only one is in Northwest Plaza, right?
That is correct.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Right now. And yeah, Holly, thank you for that correction, and Elise put that very well and concisely in the chat. Any excuse, you could vote now, but then anyone can vote early as of October 22nd. And Missouri does make it confusing by saying in-person absentee, even if you're not actually going to be absent. So that's why I like to just call it early voting and get rid of all the jargon.
Yeah. I'm making note of the time. It is 1:03. I want to thank everyone for being here, especially for our presenters, for Benjamin Singer and Jen Bernstein and Mevi Mead. Thank you all three of you for your expertise, for your insights, and especially for your incredibly hard work on the ballot initiatives you are championing, and also just making sure that we have access to a system of elections and democracy that help us have our voices be heard. I want to also thank the Mirowitz Center, who is our partner in spreading, accurate election information and championing the rights of democracy in this program as well. We did record this. We are going to be sharing it out with folks who are on this call or who registered, and also with JCRC's constituents. So we appreciate everyone's help, and thank you again for being here. If you have follow-up questions, we're always available, but I appreciate your time, and I hope you all have a wonderful day. And if I don't see you before, I guess, Wednesday, Shana Tova, a sweet new year to those who celebrate. I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of their day. Take care.